Alright. It's been 15 minutes. Give y'all enough time to get your asses in here. This is what we're doing. Tier list, leader tier list. Dragon Ball. What is up with all your shit takes, boys? So, this might not be perfect order. Just because turns out my image preview is not hat swap. We're hat swapping. No, that cannot go in there. Shit. Of course it went in here. Actually, that's not so bad. Just one sec, guys. Just gotta get some chili powder off of a hat. Alright. Getting my earphones on with these things it's gonna get really, really tough. Alright. Just leader or decks? I mean, like, not just leader. We'll talk about their deck, because I think it's kind of tough to talk. For most leaders, it's kind of tough to talk about them as far as, like, without the deck itself. So for the most part, I think we're going to be talking about, like, the leader slash deck is decks placed in the meta. Like, I know there's a couple of leaders where, like, launch has, like, multiple decks and stuff like that. But for the most part, we'll be talking them in respect to their deck and the place in the meta for the most part. It's kind of where we'll be focusing on. Yeah, the channel point rewards are add them in. They were so that's how we ended up getting a VTuber and protagonist stream yesterday. I fiddled around with the points just so it's not as easy. All right, so starting off, Broly. Now that he has the new field card, he gets a ton of card advantage. But I'm not gonna lie, guys, I see this guy nowhere. But I know he's a decent deck. But right now, and like, reminder, this is before Battle Evolution, I think his chain is still too susceptible. I think he's B tier. Québécois, that's right. En fait ça de même, Moula. It's a nice hat. Yeah, thanks. I got it at the dollar store like a few years ago. You need the rogue. So here's the thing. My problem with rogue is like, what's rogue? Rogue means it can win, but it's not. Like I talk about rogue decks all the time, but when we're talking about a tier list, isn't a rogue deck just essentially a tier 2 deck that people don't play often? Right? So like if tier 1 was meta, tier 2 is effectively just a deck that can win sometimes, can do that, but is basically just not represented as often as like a tier 1. So for the most part, if it's rogue, I'm just gonna be placing it in tier 2. Because for a long time I did tier 1, tier 1.5, blah, blah, but at the same time I think it's just like, it makes it confusing when some people talk about rogue and some people talk about tier 1.5 and so on and so forth. So I think just keeping it clean, here's the rankings, and we'll see where we go from there. Don't have set one Green Gohan on this list, and I'm a bit of... Hey guys, not everything's gonna make this list, I'm gonna tell you guys right now. Yeah, here's the thing, like Broly is fine, it's annoying, but I think it's kind of whatever, right? Like, you still don't accrue an insane amount of advantage. You accrue more advantage now, but I think the chain is still super susceptible. I think the deck still doesn't do enough. Now with the Battle Evolution support, maybe, because it makes the chain more consistent and more annoying to deal with. But in regards to like what it is right now, I think it's just pretty much B. I think B is a fair place for that. Alright. Frieza, Golden Frieza. I mean, here's the thing, there are some strong pilots that can take this deck very far. We've seen it, they've done okay. I still think it's a B tier deck. It's kind of where I'm feeling about this one. That's the thing, like, we have to take meta representation into account. Like, yes, there's like some French players that are able to take him into a top or finals winning finish. Hurrah to them. But when we consider population size as well, that is so minuscule, and I think if more people were playing this deck, more people would be teching to play against this deck, and then they'd go, it'd be a totally different thing from there, right? Oh, also, for some reason, Mecca Frieza, I just noticed is in here, so we'll add Mecca Frieza in after, but like, shocker, he's E tier. So that's the thing. I think it's good. I think it accrues a lot of value, but I think it's more of a shock factor. And like this deck is one of those decks that can come up, but it won't. So, but like the more it comes up, the more people will answer it. That's kind of where I'm at with it. All right, we'll put the earphones down here for now. Oh, is Mecca there? Sweet. Oh, there you go. I am intelligent. All right, next up, Bonds of Friendship. Everyone's favorite deck. It is the fair deck. It draws a ton of cards, but at this point, so this is the deck that for the longest time would never die, right? This is the deck that was always going to be around, that was always going to do its thing. It draws a lot of cards. It'll always consistently do what it does. But I think we've finally gotten to a point where okay, these are just bugging the shit out of me. I'll put them on when I switch to a more convenient hat. But I think now we've gotten to a point where it is so fair that it's probably C tier. B for sure? Wow, you guys are really high up on this stills. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think in the Unison world we're in, but it does work with Unisons. But the other decks do the vanilla stuff better now, so I think you guys might have to sell me on B because I think it's a C tier deck at this point. It draws a lot of cards. It does a ton. I think we never see it though. And don't get me wrong, I love the deck. And it draws a ton of cards. So maybe that's enough to say it's good. Especially since the vanilla package can sometimes get there depending on the deck. But I think when you're facing things like Red Broly, Mecca, I mean, this deck doesn't really care about Mecca all that much, I guess. But until proven otherwise, I think we're going to leave this over into C. Ugh. And of course, we'll do a refresh. As we keep on pushing things and ranking them, we'll see where they land. It's annoying to play against? I mean, it can be. I imagine it see some play with Janemba, especially since it can use Toa's pay 2 effect for a free 4 drop, but that's just me. I mean, that's the thing, but like, for me, the shocker isn't it seeing play. I can totally see it seeing play. Is it, but like, when you play against this deck, do you ever, like, how do you feel going up against this deck? And this deck is like, sure, it can do like cool things, but I feel at this point, it's not at a level where I feel it's oppressive. Is kind of where I'm landing on it right now. Including the fact that now, like, you know, we have the Red Piccolo, Red Broly is a real deck, which means your one drop is even less likely to survive. Even if you go for a more aggro variant, I mean, a lot of decks right now are positioned against aggro. So at the moment, I just kind of feel like it's kind of C tier at the moment. But I could see it bump up depending on like what we see people play, because this deck could be built in 1,000,001 ways. So based on that, it could definitely change everything. Bulma. I think Bulma is still a solid B tier deck. Maybe even A tier? Where is she? Top of B tier? A tier? Somewhere between these two. Like, I'm even fine with saying A, because like she's basically just a slightly inferior launch in my opinion. But like she can still do the Gotenks stuff, she can still do the Gogeta stuff, she still does the red stuff. You can play a burn deck with her. Like, there's a lot of different red variants that are super annoying to deal with. She's super defensive, which is really good considering the decks that we're going up against. She establishes 1,000,000 blockers, which is super good in this meta. And that is true, she has topped and performed. So I'm like totally okay with Bulma going A. Oh no, I mean, always give your opinion, Lazo. Like, the casual opinion matters as well, don't get me wrong. Because there are some perspectives we might not be accounting for when we're talking about competitiveness. Just because they're more unexplored than they've used to be. But yeah, so I think A is definitely fair. I'm totally cool with that. Yeah, I'm cool with A. I think she's powerful enough to say A. Hatchak. What a weird deck, man. I mean, we've seen it in the Canadian tournament, right? It can do stuff. It's pretty annoying. It can stabilize against Dark Broly. I still think it's a B tier deck. Yeah, that new peel off that plays the Maya and the Shu gives you 3 blockers, which is pretty good, and then they die peel off Machine Master. Exactly, like it's just that the Bulma just has a lot of things going for her. The lull tier. I don't know. We'll reserve the lull tier for anything that really is kind of just not there. But honestly, Hatch, I think B tier. You could argue, like maybe better than Broly, but I think because Broly's getting more support upcoming and is in green, it just gives you even more, especially considering the unisons and the answers in green are better. You can run Dormant. Yeah, Android 21 is not on here. We're not accounting for Battle Evolution stuff, so Android 21 will not be represented on here. If we were talking about Battle Evolution stuff, I would talk about Android 21. But right now, you're welcome to stay mad because she'd be in the LOL tier. That's all I'm saying. Isn't it pretty weak to removal? Yeah, it is. I mean, it definitely is. But it in itself is also a really hard deck to kill, which I think gives a lot of value. So I think like low B, like we've seen it do stuff. We've seen it represented. It can still strike up some wins. And against some decks in the meta, it actually counters them decently hard. And it will only become better the more black stuff we have. So, bro, you best be getting ready to riot right now. I don't know what to tell you. Alright, moving on, boys. Cooler. Legit just added that because of Trey. Not gonna lie. That's the only reason that's here. Also not gonna lie. No matter how much I like Trey. C tier. Milling I think is not... Milling against some decks is actually super viable. Against Sin Shenron, you can actually like... The old version of Sin Shenron, you could consistently mill them out. I think some decks you can get there. But I think red, blue, just stuff in general just doesn't really get there. L? Everyone's saying LOL tier? I'm even okay putting LOL tier. I'm not even gonna lie. Like... It just feels to me like you're not doing anything insanely. Like, I've never gone up against a cooler and been like, ugh. And even less so this format. So, I don't know. I'm interested. Like, cooler can still do stuff. It can still mill. But I feel like the stuff you're doing isn't super powerful. I think the deck is kind of a meme at this point. I'm okay with putting it here. But like at the same time, the deck draws, you get access to blue, which has some powerful stuff. I don't know, but you don't get the great counterplays. Your unisons are kind of mid. I'll just put him in lull tier for now. Just like if ever Trey shows up, he can be a little tilted. But odds are we might move this. But we'll see how everything else shapes up. But for the most part, this deck kind of seems like it does nothing at this point in time. Jiren. So we saw Jiren do really well. We saw the guy from the Hermit. Saw the guys from the Hermit style podcast talk about it. Performed well with it. It was an HOM variant. Do I believe in it though? B? You guys still think it's C? Yeah, that's fair. As a top, I think the deck is still powerful. Universe 11's eventually going to get support. You can run a multitude of builds with them since the Universe 11 package isn't all that deep. Alright, everyone's ready to contend on B. And then the 1C, but I think B I can agree with. Now, where do we place it? I think it's actually probably more powerful than the rest of these, to be honest. Probably better out, yeah. I think in terms of like what this deck can do, what it can prevent your opponent from doing. Like Red Broly, like this deck isn't dying to Red Broly anytime soon. You know, at least not main board, that's for sure. So I think you're just vibing with this. Yeah, but it has to be a board wipe that hits barrier, right? So yes, against some decks that's going to be really good, but a lot of decks do not actually have an answer for what this thing is doing. Which I think is the biggest thing. Do I think Frieza and Hirudegarn are better than OG Broly? I just haven't tested OG Broly. I mean, like, if you guys tell me OG Broly is better than Golden Frieza, I'm totally okay with putting it here. I just feel like the chain that Broly has access to right now is more vulnerable than the stuff Frieza's doing, because at least Golden Frieza is like all arrival and defensive based. But it can be proactive if it wants to. It also gets outsells Xeno way easier. Like, it can actually turbo outsell Xeno like it's nothing, which I value a lot versus Broly. Yeah, but I mean, most decks aren't going that long game, right? Like, I think there's a lot of edge cases, but at the end of the day, that's what B is built for. It's just solid what the? What did I do? I broke it. I'm gonna be honest, guys. I was screwing around. I don't know what I did. We're gonna just boop. So I magically created duplicates. I don't know how, but somehow I created duplicates. So we'll just get rid of these guys. Teach me to screw around with this thing. This guy can go here. This guy can go here. The B above A is fine because I ended up clicking this thing. How I got the dupes though, I have no idea. I don't know, man. I'm a god. Like, the stuff I do sometimes blows my own mind. Yeah, so Bulma A tier. There we go. So in regards to where these three are right now, like, I'm fine with saying Hacha, like, kind of like this. Like, I'm fine saying this kind of setup. Like, I'll take your guys' word for it that this is good. I just think his chain is super vulnerable. So yeah, so what I was saying is that B tier is like really that. It's like consistent, it'll do what it's due, but it doesn't have the best matchups across the entire board. You are gonna have some bad matchups, explicitly some of which are in Z tier. Off topic, will you be playing in the PPG Digimon or DBS tournament this weekend? Yes, if you guys want to catch me play in tournaments, I will be playing both the Saturday and Sunday tournament. So Saturday for Digimon and Sunday for Dragon Ball. So if you guys want to watch tournament play, I will be live those 2 days, starting at 12 EST on both days. Probably going to jump on 45 minutes to half an hour before, but I will be playing these weekend. Alright, moving on from Jiren. Invoker. I think Invoker is top of A tier. I think it can just barely be Z tier deck, but the problem is Broly's in here and the Broly matchup is like stupid abysmal. I think the Mecca Frieza matchup is fine. Dark Broly is really tough because they can kill you really quickly. But if you stabilize, it might, I think top of A tier. I think like literally there is so very few things that are preventing it from being here, but there's just a few things that make it tough for it to consistently be here. Also, whenever people talk about banning something in this deck, don't ban something from this deck. Just go ahead and ban Legends. He's the broken piece of it all. So if we just ban Legends, I think this is very fair. But I think top of A tier is where we leave him. Literally, like if there was a tier 1.5, this would be like the epicenter of 1.5 in my opinion. Too much aggro. Red Broly like completely stomps on it. You can tech super hard against those matchups. You get like if you run a bunch of Violent Rays in your deck, I think you're much more prone to being able to succeed. But oh shit, I forgot. Okay, that's fine. That's whatever. But that's really where we're leaving it. It loses to any deck that wins on turn 2 or their turn 3. I mean, not necessarily, but it does have a harder time against those decks. But I think a lot of those decks, if you stabilize with like a Vegeta Invoker on board, they can't do anything against you. So it's kind of a toss-up. But if you run the right floodgates between Violent Rays or Toppo or whatever, like I can decently consistently get to my turn 4, turn 5 against decks that are trying to turn 3 me. So it's a toss-up. Cell. If we had a rogue section, this is where I would put. This is like the prime rogue deck in my opinion. Otherwise, though, I think it's an A tier deck. I think piloted by the right people, it's super powerful. It does a lot of annoying things. It's super consistent. And every time this deck shows up, almost every time, like we know that this deck is in there, someone ends up topping with it. But it's just, it has a very core player base and not very many people delve into this deck. But I think this deck is still super powerful. It can be really annoying defensive if you want to. It rips a ton of cards out of your opponent's hand over time. It can actually like counterattack really hard. Like if you're gonna kick back and think your opponent won't be able to kill you, Cell actually does a pretty good job. So I think overall, Surge Cell is probably an A tier deck. Probably even above Bulma, TBH. Hit. Primarily the Janemba package stuff. It's strong. I think he's got a couple of builds that are solid. Oh, it has fallen off, but anytime it sees tournament play, it does really well. And that could be talking just about really strong self-search pilots, but I think the deck is still reliably, like every time like we know that the deck's in a tournament, it ends up doing super well. So in the last few tournaments me and Eggman have commentated, it's actually shown up in the finals. So here's the thing with Hit. I think it's solid. Is it solid enough? I don't know. I think being an off-color Janemba deck is a little bit tough. Or at least it can be. But he does have great... But he does have great defensive ability and being able to pop off a double striker critical any turn. Which is really good against Broly. So I'm thinking like B tier personally for Hit. Because honestly, on paper does a lot. There's a couple of decks that work really well with it. But I wouldn't put it anywhere further than that. But I'd probably put him above here. Just because of how good this deck is against Red Broly. Versus like all of these. Probably this one. Although I'd even just argue maybe this one. But I'm fine with putting Hit here. Especially since there's a variety of builds that we can run. Like you said, Pod Hit. There's Janemba Hit. I mean, there's just like Red Midrange Hit, which is like is not the worst deck in the world. Oh, I hate this deck. I hate this deck. I hate this deck. The worst part is I feel like I'd actually be a decent Gohan pilot, deck pilot, because I think I pilot aggro decently well. But this A tier, right? I feel like it'd be disrespectful to all of its tops, even when it was banned in best of ones, to say that Gohan is not A tier. Probably like right up there. Yeah, I'm agreeing with you guys on this one. Not much to say. Can like straight up buy the leader by itself, can straight up win you games. Best of 3, yeah, best of 3 definitely does well. And that was even before the banning. We had a couple of best of 3 tournaments, the official Bandai ones, and in a lot of those tournaments, Gohan still topped, and then I think it even won a couple. So there's so many things. Yeah, exactly. Like there's so many things going right with this deck. I don't even think there's an argument to like say it's not A tier. And if we're talking best of ones, if it was still legal in best of ones, E tier. So I think when we're taking best of 3 into account and like the current bannings and stuff, I think A tier is just fine for the deck. Yamcha. It's cute. It has some cool combos. Red mid-range though, overall, C tier. Is it LOL? I don't know. Is it that bad? Because I still think the deck can accrue value, but it's a red mid-range deck. Red doesn't really do anything. But it's really strong, it's really consistent. Like, it's really consistent, right? You're always going to be able to find your things. You can play like Toppo Turbo. Feels really weird. That's the thing, right? And I think it's just that red in general feels weird. I think is the biggest thing. I think that's the biggest thing that makes it tough for us to be able to really decide on whether we want to do something or not. I'm fine with saying LOL, to be honest. Like, if you're doing red, you're doing Bulma, you're doing launch. If you're doing... We can put him in LOL for now. Because I really feel like red mid-range just doesn't do anything. Like, it's a super do-nothing deck. At least Cooler's a do-nothing deck that mills you. This is a do-nothing deck that tries to play a card, the card gets answered, and then, like, that's the end of your turn. Ss4 Trunks. So blue decks right now are in a weird spot. But I think this is either high B tier, low A tier. TBH. I think the deck does some powerful things. I think if your opponent's Turbo Awakening, he's just helping you awaken, which is all the better. I think it has a really good matchup against Broly. I want to say 8. B? I could say B. I'm fine with B, to be honest. I'm not gonna lie, I'm biased just because I really like the deck. Yeah, I could agree with that notion. I don't mind it. The only reason I'm really high on it is because like it mitigates the Broly matchup super well because you just can't get critted. So I think that's something to keep in mind. That's all. But I'm fine with high B. High B is respectable for it because it hasn't, like, aside from that one time Legends topped with it, like the deck hasn't had that much representation at top tables. So I'm fine with saying high B. There's potential there. It has some great, like some good matchups against Z tier stuff, but it's not too busted. Yo, Flashfire, how you doing? We're just vibing, making a tier list, talking leaders, talking some Dragon Ball. Got my Quebec hat on. Zamasu. Here's the problem. I love the deck. The deck has had tops in the past. It does well. My problem with Zamasu is that if you don't have Zeno on board, this leader sucks nuts. Like hard. But when you have Zamasu on board, this deck accrues so much value. I'm not gonna lie, I think it's on the same level as Trunks in regards to blue leaders, in my opinion. I think just like Trunks, if you see the right things, it's busted. But without Zeno, it's kind of mid. But it has results, so I'm willing to put it at the top of B tier. Yeah, I agree. All right, I'm glad we're all on the same page. I thought I might have to fight some of you guys on that one, but yeah, Zamasu definitely B tier. Fortunately, they print a card to counter Reboot Gohan, then it gets banned. Yeah, but I mean, at the end of the day, Reboot Gohan is just banned best of ones, right? So there's still best of ones tournaments you can participate in. All right, well, I'm glad we don't have to fight about it. Go Tanks. SS Go Tanks. SS Go Tanks. C tier? Even with the support, it's still kind of mid. The stuff you're doing isn't insanely powerful. It's a good generic leader, but it just hasn't really gotten there at any point in time. So I think C tier is probably where it's stuck at. Can still do some powerful stuff just because yellow does powerful things, but I think you're better off if you're gonna try running him. You're probably just better off running Mecca Frieza, right? For a lot of the stuff that you're trying to do, so it really doesn't matter. That's the thing. The leader is good. It's a good generic leader. Like every time I think generic yellow, I think Go Tanks because I mean it just does a lot of good stuff. But the deck itself is kind of mid. The 7 cost a star needs barrier. I agree. Something to protect it. Absolutely. Yeah, so I'm fine with saying C tier. The leader's good. There's potential there. It's in yellow. Yellow can do some annoying stuff, which means the leader can be annoying with the right build. But I think the archetype itself, the yellow Union Fusion stuff needs some more support. And that is true. Yeah. If Mecca wasn't there, it definitely would be. Alright, what's next? Ooh, Shenron. I think this is our first Z tier leader. I think Shenron's super powerful. I think now that you can basically be a proper turbo, I think now that you can probably be a turbo Xeno deck proper, you can be aggressive, you can be defensive. I think there's so many good things here. I mean, maybe y'all disagree with me, but I think Shenron is a Z tier leader. Yo, Jose, how's it doing? Hope you're doing well. Hope your Wednesday's going well. Hey, am I going to veto you guys on this one? Because here's the thing. Shenron hard counters Red Broly. It has an okay matchup against Mecca Frieza. I'd argue a pretty decent one actually at that because of all the skill negation and the big bodies. But Dark Broly though. Dark Broly's a problem, I'm not gonna lie. Dark Broly makes the deck super annoying. But you can beat it now because you lean more aggressive. But Not tier 0. Z isn't tier 0. Z is tier 1. Lose to time. Here's the thing. I could say because Sin hasn't won an event, maybe I could put it A tier. If that's the case, then it's definitely higher than Invoker. I'll do it here because of how many of you guys think it's an A tier deck, but I think you guys are still sleeping on it. I think there's just not enough pilots around this deck because I think this deck can be like so nutty. So I can agree with you guys. This is like a pseudo democracy. I only veto you guys like 5% of the time. So we'll go with this one. Because you know what? Fine, based on results, based on standings, fine. It's not as high. But I will say I think people are sleeping on this leader. Broly. Alright, fight me. I don't understand why the population size is so low on Broly. I don't understand why it doesn't have more wins than it does. But every time I play against this deck, it's a piece of shit. So someone fight me on this one, please. Because I think most people will agree. But if anyone disagrees for whatever reason, please let me know. I give you 10 seconds. Maybe, I mean, maybe, right? I mean, the promos are still like 50 bucks each. I mean, you do have an SCR that's ranging around like, what, $150, $200. So I'm not all that shocked by that fact, for what it's worth. The deck is super strong. It does stupid unfair things. Like, the fact that it's a critical attacking deck that can rip out your entire hand before it starts critical attacking you is ridiculous. 800 now? SCR Broly? What? No way. I mean, I believe you. Because, like, for some reason, Dragon Ball is the new Pokemon. And, like, everyone's buying out everything. Y'all are ridiculous. I don't understand why. But really? Broly is $600 now. Bruh. Bruh. I picked mine up for like 120. What the fuck? What the hell? Or 80. I think I picked mine up for 80 bucks. I can't remember how much I paid Randy for it. Bruh. What's happening with this game? What is happening with this game, guys? That's a rip. Because this thing's good, but it's not $500 good. Isn't this like more expensive than Cell Xeno? That's more expensive than Cell Xeno. That makes no sense. This SCR is so fundamentally broken versus what this guy can do. It has to be a collector's thing. It just has to be, right? Because like that makes no sense to me. What the hell? That's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, I saw that the Supreme Kai SCR is expensive now too. She was like, what, $200 at the beginning of the week? $200 this weekend? Now she's like $350. Here's the thing, guys, like set 12 is cheap to buy. Boxes aren't that expensive. So for her to hold up her price that high right now, I think is a little ridiculous. I think she will dip. Personally, because it's like the main active core set right now. It's like people are still getting these prize packs whenever they participate in tournaments. People are still buying these boxes. I don't know if this justifies it, because if it does, then just buy out a fuck ton of cases of set 12 and just flip them all, because you're almost guaranteed to make your money. So I don't see this holding for too long, but at the same time, set 12 doesn't have a ton of money in the set itself aside from SCRs and revival packs. So, Violent Rays are going for 70. I knew I should have picked up my Violent Rays a while ago. I mean, Violent Rays makes sense though. Like, it sucks, but like so much of the format gets hit by this card that it makes a ton of sense. But I'm upset because I only have one. I should have picked them up a while ago for 20 bucks each. I knew at some point I was supposed to buy them, but not gonna lie, I got really bad with buying new cards in set 11 because I almost bought nothing. So with set 11, me buying nothing, and then set 12, like me just making my order this week, I'm not really shocked. So rip me, but that's fine. We'll live. Might have to sell Broly swap. I mean, shit, it's worth money now. This game is if you don't buy on release date, you can't play the game competitive. I mean, it definitely makes it tough. I'm not gonna lie. Stuff like this is not making it easy for us to get into the competitive side of the game. It's definitely tough. As I said on FB post about SCR current overpriced and a non-full reprint them so everyone has access. Cards should be accessible. I will say SCRs I think are some of the few cards that I'm actually okay with being tough to get. Because of how is this still $20? It's a banned card. Anyways, whatever. Maybe people are specking on it getting unbanned. So SCRs make sense to me because like there's no value in this game. And I think sets having some value somehow in the form of SCRs is actually pretty okay. But they are importantly expensive. But most decks can do fine without them. Is your deck better with an SCR Broly? Yes. Does it absolutely mandatory? No. I think one of the few SCRs that like are really mandatory for some decks are Cell Xeno. But because so many decks need Cell Xeno, I think it validates its price point. So 4 Violent Rays up for trade just gone. I think reprinting SCRs would like kill any fluidity in this game. That's my issue. Yeah, but they got reprinted in revision packs and they were none of the good ones. So, and look at their price, right? Like they absolutely tanked. Oh, I'm actually shocked. It's still a $55, $50 card in foil. $80 card. It's not too bad. I really thought the price of this dropped hella hard with the reprint. Bro, prices are crazy. Prices are crazy. Anyways, all that to say, we'll wrap it back. We can talk about expensive cards after, but SCRs do be expensive right now. All the SPRs from set 1 are expensive now. A lot of collectibles are expensive in this game, but at the same time, collectibles drive people to the game, so it's a tough balance. I think as long as SR version of cards are non-expensive, then it's fine. I don't accept the argument that SPRs need to be cheap. Your deck does not need to be full blinged out. If you're just trying to play the game competitively, if the SRs are accessible, and then like I don't really care how expensive the SPRs are. I like foiling out my deck all except the foil tax, you know? I don't 100% agree with that. I mean, Commander deck can have 1k value after a couple of years, don't lose value. I mean, you can't really compare a standard set competitive game versus a casual game. Commander's casual. Like there's no competitive circuit for it. There's no prizing on the line 99% of the time that you're playing Commander. So Commander not losing value is more of a demand thing than anything else. Whereas like a lot of cards that are expensive now lose a ton of playability down the road. And also Commander's Magic the Gathering, which value in cards are worth way more in Magic than they are in Dragon Ball. Alright, we'll focus. Back into the tier list stuff. Alright, but I agree with you guys, the game's getting expensive, I'm not gonna lie. Baby! Geta might fight me on this one, but I think Baby's B tier. I think he's like here. Somewhere like that. Something like that. Yeah, I get him. Hey. Yep, CCGs are hella expensive now. Plus the Pokemon boom. The Pokemon boom didn't help at all. Blue Baby is Dark Horse topping it, naturally good matchup against aggro. Baby's like Invoker, plays a different game. Fine. 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 I'll even put it above Bulma. But that's the best you get. It's the best you get. Granted, I need to get around to playing Baby. I've been saying for the longest time I was gonna play Baby when the deck got released, and I never got around to it. So Heroic Prospect for 2, Mafuba for 1. It's nuts. I mean, that's true. It is pretty good. Fine. Baby can sit at A. I'm not gonna fight you guys. Ooh, it looks like we might have them finally lined up. Ss4 Vegeta. I love this deck. I'm almost tempted to put in the LOL tier though. It just feels like this deck doesn't do enough. LOL tier means like we don't even talk about it. Like these are decks that like, so if Z tier is tier 1, it's absolutely meta. A tier is like they're decks we're gonna see that top that can potentially win an event once in a while, but aren't the most consistently doing so. B tier are just good strong decks that you know you'll probably end up seeing in a tournament. Not often, but if you saw them you wouldn't be shocked. They can do strong powerful things. C tier is like it's a deck that has potential. It can do some things from time to time. It's a deck that might have lost favor right now in the meta, but like there's value in the deck being played, and if you played it and you were a skillful pilot, you might be able to do some decent things with it. LOL tier is like anything below that, like we just laugh it off. I like the leader. I think the leader can do a lot. I think he's just a little too balanced. The fact that on Awaken he doesn't untap or you only draw one, that super sucks. The fact that you don't get to draw a second card when you swing twice, why not? The fact that blockers are huge in the game right now. There's a ton of great blockers in the game. I mean that you're not consistently poking your opponent, which is tough. Dark Broly matchup sucks balls, unless you can actually ramp and like get to a point where you stabilize. Red Broly matchup is a lull. Mecca Frieza like prevents half your plays, so it's tough. I think it's LOL tier, unfortunately, just because of those facts. But I think he's blue and you can play a general blue deck with him, which still makes him strong, which I probably put him on top of these two red leaders. Needing the ape, you need to be able to ramp properly as Yikes. Yeah, and like if you don't run the ape, then you run the Kamehamehas instead. I don't know, it's tough. It's a tough place to be in. Because then if you're running the ape, then you're not drawing cards consistently, which means you're like, because you're not running baby instead. It's the deck is in a weird spot. I do like Tragedy, don't get me wrong guys. Every time I play this leader, I play the Tragedy over ground. But I think it's being able to consistently get Tragedy over ground and then not die the turn after is really tough. So I think we're gonna let him vibe in LOL for now. We can talk about it though. So Gotenks next. Hey, okay, somehow we've lined it up. Gotenks. I mean A tier, right? Probably somewhere like here. I think it's a strong deck. It still does what it does really well. It's one of the most consistent decks in the game at being able to do what it does. What? You killed my boss monster? You killed my primary attacker? Okay, I'm gonna get the pieces back to be able to do it all over again. You can straight up write out the amount of times that Gotenks get their perfect turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, because all their plays line up into all of their other plays. So higher than Invoker? Nah, because I think Invoker beats this deck, personally. And we have Legends, which I think a lot of green play Gotenks players have moved off the deck. But granted, these two are like, this one I think is a notch above these two, but I think these two are pretty like close by. I wouldn't feel offended doing either or, but because this is my list, I'm just gonna put Invoker on top. But honestly, I wouldn't hate either or. So yeah, not much to talk about there. Gotenks is Gotenks. Gotenks is gonna do Gotenks things. Majin Vegeta, A tier. Probably right next to Reboot Gohan. I think Gotenks is better. I think it's strong. Because you can play this deck in best of 1 still, I will put it above Reboot Gohan. Though I'd argue I think Reboot Gohan's ceiling is higher. But this deck is super powerful, does a bunch of busted things, can kill you on turn 2. If it manages to get to a turn 3, you're taking like 10 plus attacks to the face. Yep. I think it's just solid A tier. Don't really have to talk much about it. It's a powerful, aggressive deck. Dark Broly. I don't know, B tier, I guess. Eh. It does stuff. I mean, it's chilling. But like Shroom is in the format now, guys, and Shroom and Salsa really hurts graveyard strategies. You know, so mainly because of that, I think the deck might have a lot of hard time. You know, because like Shroom and Salsa, like that being in the deck is really keeping this thing in check. I'm not a very good actor, am I? The most represented deck in the format, in the meta right now. 30k attackers, 30k blockers, 30k hand rip. A bunch of annoying attacks, some of the best overwhelms in the game. And it being able to aggro and then still combo your pieces away when you're done attacking with them to defend yourself. I think it is probably best deck in format right now. In terms of representation, in terms of matchups. Like this deck is almost 50-50 against everything. Almost 50-50 against everything. Which is like super good. Yeah. I mean, look, maybe I'm a better actor than I thought because y'all really balling out on this whole not being B. But yeah. 100% Z tier. Don't really need to talk about it. Best deck in format, arguably. Well, best of luck to you, get it. What are you trying to buy it for? Like 200 or something like that? 250? I mean, that's a pretty good bargain on what's that, so. Launch. Guys, I want to put Launch Z tier. I'm not gonna lie, I really want to. She's being represented so often in top placements. I think there's a number of strong variants. I think she's making rival decks relevant again. I see a lot of people like argue A, but like I think Z is kind of where I land on it. I think she's like a strong tier 1 contender. I think if anyone's sleeping on her, they're like an idiot. Because this deck can play defensively, it can play offensively, it draws a million cards. You know exactly what to take in your life almost at all times. Like, I'm okay with saying bottom of Z tier, but I still think competitively, meta-wise, the things this deck does, it should be Z tier for now. If the arrival stuff is no longer good, then fine. I'm fine with knocking her down to A. But because of the place the arrival stuff is doing in the deck, in the meta right now, I'm okay with saying Z tier. I will say though, the defensive game Bulma still does better because the infinite blockers is still really tough for a bunch of decks to deal with. So if you were purely a combo defensive deck trying to do like the burn stuff, I think you still go Bulma anyways. But otherwise, I think Launch is like super strong. Plus it's Launch, guys. I mean, like, look at her. Look at her. Come on. King Piccolo. Man, I don't believe in this deck, but a lot of people have been telling me they're on it. I kind of just want to put him like high B tier. It's aggro. I think a lot of people are picking up on it, but like, to me, like an aggro deck that can get there doesn't really impress me. Because like, yeah, it's an aggro deck. Sometimes they'll just get there because your opponent didn't see the right cards. So I haven't played against the deck a ton. I haven't seen the deck a ton. I've seen some people talk about it. Personally, I think this is kind of where we leave it. Although I'm willing to hear about this one because like I'm not 100% sold on it. Yeah, I'm in the same boat as Yado. I just don't know the deck super well to say one way or another. I mean, what's not serious about this hat? This is a representation of the province I'm from, le beau Québec. Je me souviens. Come on, guys. Of course I'm gonna be serious talking with this. It's a representation of my province. Come on. Feels really good every time I've played it. And it's topped. Fine. I'll put it here. I'm not happy about it. Because I still feel this is kind of a whatever deck. But I've seen people be high on it. So I'm fine with saying it should be here. I'm fine with saying it should be here. Yeah, that's fine. I don't hate giving it the benefit of the doubt. It's an aggro deck. It is 2021, so what the hell knows? GameStop was a $400 stock a couple weeks ago. So anything can happen, right? Hey, there you go, baby. Alright, fine. We'll leave it there for now. I don't hate on it, but we'll see. Pycon. I had him in LOL, but I know there's a couple of guys on PPG who are talking about this deck. I think that there's some people I know who are talking about this deck. But like, the SCR sucks ass, but we're not talking about the SCR, we're talking about the deck. Gogeta's a strong card, but you can play around it. I don't know. To me, it just feels mid, but maybe I'm wrong. I feel like it should probably be like C, because it's like it's set 12 design, it draws a lot of cards, you get to manipulate the top of your deck, which is powerful. So you're gonna see the cards you need, but it feels like a lull deck. Yeah, like that's the thing, right? Like it's an LOL, like it's a C tier deck that feels like it should be here, because it doesn't feel like it does it. But it's with the deck manipulation stuff, with the card draw, like you see enough cards that you're gonna see the stuff you need, and it has a very strong boss monster. The sampling size is bad. I don't disagree with you, but bad sampling size is an indicator of meta representation, and we have to take that into account when we're tiering them. It is the kind of deck that eventually, if it gets new support, like it would be on the cusp of being insane if it just had a couple of better cards. That's it. That's all it is. But right now it feels like you're doing a million things to accomplish a semi-decent thing. And the boss monster is good, but like, I don't know. So I think at this point we'll just leave it in C tier because it can do some stuff. It can draw cards, it can deck manipulate. So it does a lot of things that are really cool, that like are actually viable, that keep it under, like out of LOL tier. But like it feels like an LOL deck. So it's like, it's weird. It does a lot, but that's the thing. Is it just doing a lot for the sake of doing a lot? And right now it feels like it's a deck that's just doing a lot for the sake of doing a lot. But I also think the deck is under-tested. I think it's underrepresented. I think a lot of people haven't messed with it yet. So it is a deck that I could easily see go to A tier if it's like turns out the blue stuff, it's doing better than any other blue deck. But for now, I think we'll just chill it at C because I don't think it's doing anything crazy. Janemba, just straight up the new Janemba. Bottom of B. I think it's strong. I think the Janemba chain carries this, but I don't think it's the best leader for the deck. But it can do some cool things. It can put on a lot of aggression. Actually, like arguably, like right next to hit. Like it, like I'm fine putting Janemba here. The Janemba, really? So, but that's the thing, right? So the leader is a C tier. I can agree with that. The archetype is an A tier. So if we put those together, this leader with that archetype is probably like B tier. Like if someone was running Janemba Engine with this deck, they could kill a decent amount of decks. So like, here's the thing. I agree with giving the Janemba Engine A tier. I agree with giving the leader C tier. When we balance those out and say, okay, this leader is almost 99% of the time running the Janemba chain, then it's probably a B tier deck. It's going to get wins off the back of the Janemba engine 99% of the time, but it's a leader that works with that engine, so why not just throw it in there? So, you're going to get wins with it. Are you going to win an event? Likely not, but you're probably going to place, you know, a number of wins in a tournament. I agree. I'm not saying it's the best at what it does, and I'd even put it below hit. But I think in terms of just being an aggro deck, it does the aggro thing. So Slug. This leader's so ugly. Why does this art look this way? Why does this art look this way? It is so ugly. Anyway, C tier. I've seen the deck do something. Some of the slug cards are like super annoying. I've seen like a person play this deck. It was fine. It was fine. I still hate the entire idea of giving your opponent a bunch of cards. Even with their boss monster. I don't even care about their boss monster. That's the thing, like, group hug, like, Dragon Ball is just not meant for group hug. Like, you are just giving your opponent way too much free advantage to be able to find the outs to your deck. That's my entire issue with this strat. But it's set 12 design. I think it could win games based off your opponent not knowing what it does. I think it can play a semi-decent swarm strategy. And I will argue I think the right build hasn't been figured out for it yet. It is a huge contender for LOL. Huge contender for LOL. But if we're being that type of guy, which I think, chat, we are being today, to give decks the benefit of the doubt, then we're going to move it to C. Bottom C, because, like, fuck knows I don't like this card. But we'll give it the benefit of the doubt, just let it vibe there. Turles. A? Probably right below Gotenks. I think here's the thing. I think Turles is so strong on his own right. The fruit, the tree, and the leader by themselves. If you don't even run any of the Crusher Corp stuff, I think Turles is just super solid. It probably is falling off. I don't disagree with you. And I think if right now if people had to choose a green deck, they would choose probably Majin Vegeta or Gotenks. Personally. But I think it's still a strong deck. I think having access to 20k double strike on any of your Turles is insanely powerful. So I think eventually this is a deck that with either new support or just being one of the best green generic leaders in the game will really help out. But I think the deck is super powerful. I think it's super powerful. But I think right now if you're a green player, unless you just happen to love Turles as a character or love what the deck is trying to do, and I think we're having to speak objectively, you'd probably pick this guy or this guy before picking this guy. But I think all three of them are strong. I think Turles is probably falling off, but I think he does some decently powerful things. So I would not put him in top 3 of blue though. I think Gotenks, Invoker, and Shenron are all much better represented with better finishes than this thing. That's a good deck nonetheless. I'm not going to disagree with you guys on that one. Whis. Not playing Celzino sucks. Exactly. Not having Celzino as your top end super sucks. Alright, Whis. All tier? Here's the thing. C tier probably. We saw it be played at the Canadian National. It did some cool things. I actually really like the stuff it did there. But I think it's kind of like in the Pycon level where like the deck just does a lot, but it feels like it doesn't do a lot. It's just kind of that weird middle ground. I'm fine with putting it in C just because like it's a yellow combo based aggro deck. It gets some cool things. It has some recursion where if you kill the EX evolves, you get to get an opposing vanilla character, which is kind of cool. So like I'm fine with putting it in C tier personally. It does get hard stopped by Mass Saiyan, I'm not gonna lie, and it doesn't deal as well with Mass Saiyan as other decks do. So I think for this one, we're just going to keep it at C. Just for the sake that, like, it's a little bit clunky. But it can do some cool things. And it's in yellow, which has some cool extra tech cards. It has some of the best tech cards in the game. So for those reasons, I think C is like a fair spot to just leave them at. Frieza. Is this an LOL deck? I said from the beginning, this deck is either going to be like weirdly good if someone finds the right build, or it's just a meme. I think this is a meme. I haven't seen it played, but like from what I've seen from the meta, this looks like it gets like raffle stomped. But I know Egg likes it. I know Egg likes it. Don't get me wrong. But Egg also has Egg is an exceptional player, and he makes jank work. Doesn't stop it from being jank. So I'm a vibe it at L tier personally. I think this deck is kind of a joke. It does some cool things. Having your leader basically be a Mecca Cabra is awesome, and there's a bunch of life stuff you do, but I don't know if the payoffs are really worth it. The best thing that this deck does is have access to the yellow 5-drop Frieza SR, and surprise, surprise, every yellow deck has access to that SR. So for those reasons, I think it's kind of mid. Yeah, and the leader doesn't draw. Like, it's just, why? Why does this leader not draw? Yeah, but that's the thing. That's Egg. Egg does well with jank. Very few other players do. He purposely doesn't play good decks. Sometimes I really wish he would. Gogeta B? The problem is that this deck requires so many TP promos. I have not seen what a full power version of this deck does. And it also kind of gets ruffled by like BMS. But it feels like BMS aside, it's doing some really powerful things, and it can get there. No, I think, no, did I say the leader draws? So I meant it doesn't draw. Like this leader isn't drawing when it attacks. Egg would be busted if you would actually play tiered stuff. Like, I'm fine with saying like high B tier. Like, I feel like it's in the same realm as like Jiren and like these blue decks. It does some really cool, powerful things. It's really fun. But I haven't seen it full power. The representation is still kind of light on it just because of TP and stuff. So like, I feel like this middle ground of like B would be fine for it. Vegex is better, and I will be playing Vegex higher for now. Shroom and Salsa. I haven't playtested it. I haven't messed with it. I haven't seen it around. So there's a good reason this might be an LOL deck. I'm not gonna lie. I would just, if we're being the benefit of the doubt guy, I kind of want to put it here. Like higher C tier, just because like, can it do stuff? But I feel like it might be an LOL deck, which for what it's worth, I did buy my pieces for this deck, guys. So we are going to be playing Shroom and Salsa on the stream eventually. But I don't actually know how well this deck does. I just have not seen it. As much as I'm interested in playing it. It is super situational. Like, it's one of those things where like in the right meta, this thing is probably insane. And if it's not the right meta, then the deck gets kind of punished. That is true. No free counterattacks, no counterplays, none of that stuff definitely makes it tough. I'm actually fine with putting it in L tier. Like, here's the thing. I could argue C tier in the right meta. Are we the right meta? I don't even think we are, to be honest. This time, even though like we are being like a benefit of the doubt person, like this deck I've seen so little from, almost nothing. And it is kind of a meta pick type of deck. I'm fine with leaving it in the L tier, to be honest. Once your opponent goes off and has multiple cards in their drop, it's rough. Exactly, right? Because then you need to turbo stuff out of their drop, and that's really tough to do. So we'll just move on. We'll leave him in L tier for now. But next up, Toppo. Right? Right? Does this feel right? Something like this. Mid B tier. Some decks can sometimes get there. If he has like, he'll only get better with strong unisons that cost 2. Hat swap. We're hat swapping. Alright, bet. Magents. Toppo actually trashed Dark Broly, right? I mean, I think so. I mean, you're stopping your opponent to 1 attack a turn. Unisons can be tough to deal with. I think mid B is kind of where it lands. I think it's a deck that, like, if built correctly, can do a lot of things. It's a control deck, right, guys? So it is stringent on, like, how does the meta feel right now. But I think if it's built right, I think the deck can still attack the meta in a really interesting way, and in a way that a lot of decks just can't deal with it. So, for those reasons, I think we're landing it at a solid middle B. It can do stuff, it can win, but it also can have some floppy matchups, but it can attack the meta in an interesting way. But I'll put it below the Janemba package because I think the Janemba package will see more visibility. Agents of Destruction. AOD. This deck has completely dropped off. It is basically non-existent, but it was one of the most accessible decks. Thank you, Dorf. Was one of the most accessible decks available. It can still do some powerful things. But it is so not, like, putting in Seer feels disrespectful because it really does feel like AOD is significantly better than all these. But it sees zero play right now. But I'm fine with putting it in B tier, to be honest. Low B. Like, I'd be content with that. I mean, true, but at the same time, for a long time, blue decks were only really good because God Sealing Trunks exist, right? So, like it or not, if it's only good because of one card, but that card can be a 4 of in a deck and is consistently available. Like, the Android 13 card is almost like always available in this deck because you can search it out. So, I am not bringing back this deck. I am not an I am not an AOD player. I mean, I might play it on stream like for 1 week if you guys want to see me play it, but I am not an AOD player. That is not me. That is the other George for sure. So I think the deck is fine. Its power level is still fine. I think it's just not doing anything as busted versus what all this other stuff is doing. That's all. But I think the deck can still be powerful. Ultimate Deck Toa. B tier? I kind of feel like it's in the same realm as like Jiren and like Reboot and like all this jazz. Like it can do okay. I mean, you're basically just like Xenoslug Turbo. But the deck can be annoying. Some decks don't deal with like the stuff that she's doing well. Low A tier. Wow, that's more than I was expecting. High B? Yeah, like we're feeling like above Jiren type thing. Like, I'm even fine saying like somewhere around here, like in the higher end of B. Like, I'm okay with this. I think she does some powerful things. She can be super annoying, but I think a lot of decks still answer what she's doing really well to a point where I wouldn't be happy putting her on like the top of B, nor at A tier. Yeah, I could see it doing some things, right? And it is the fact once that she has a surprise factor. Like, what version of Toa are you building? Because you can build her in so many different ways. But I think for the most part, when we encompass all of them, I think it's a deck that can win, but it's not going to consistently ever top, but it'll do okay. It can like, and it has some swingy matchups. Dark Broly is, and that's the thing, right? We're in the 30k meta. 30k is really tough for a lot of stuff she's trying to do. So, I think she's strong. She can do some things, but Baby Vegeta, very aggressive deck. Probably bottom of C tier, TBH. It plays kind of like the reason this is significantly higher than these two is because the red aggro stuff that this deck can have access to can actually be super fast to a point where like puts this stuff to shame. So I don't think there's much to say about this leader. He's only ever as good as like the green stuff. But I think he's fine. Or the red stuff. But the aggro can be there. It does okay. I mean, I'd be even fine saying C tier because we don't really see him anymore. But I think he's on like a very similar power level to Agents of Destruction in terms of like what you could do with the red aggro. It is just a generically good aggro leader that happens to have removal on his backside, which is really sweet. But is it better than like Whis? Like that's kind of my standpoint right now. Is it better than the Whis stuff? I mean, just for reference, let's see what like a red baby deck does, I guess. Just to give us an idea. But I don't know. MTC, why not? And Frisco Foz, why not? So if we're looking at these decks, okay, this is just like, right, aggro. And then here we have like more King Piccolo stuff. This is kind of like a dual color. Yeah. So it does the arrival stuff. It does it aggressively. Yeah, you know what, guys? I think because it's running you can run the red-green arrival variant that launch runs. It just happens to lean a bit more aggressive. It just draws us a bunch of stuff. But I think it's still like low B tier. Like I could go up against this leader and be like, okay, I have to be careful because I might actually die. Broly Surge. The problem with Broly Surge and why Broly Surge is not as good as launch is because you don't draw enough cards. IMO. And he's kind of susceptible to dying. Yeah, that is true. I did notice that you did the Broly Surge art, which is really cool. So huge shout out to Green Skill for making these cool alt art variants of Surge Broly. Very fanciful art, gotta say. Low B? I mean, here's the thing. Launch has shown that red-green arrival is good, and red-green arrival is basically the only thing Broly does. On that basis, and on the basis that we put baby here because red-green arrival is good, I'm fine with saying low B. I could go up against this deck and be like, okay, I have to be careful or else he can kill me, especially with like the Piccolo stuff and all that jazz. So, I'm not super thrilled by it, because like, this deck feels middling every time I've gone up against it, but like, realistically, it does enough powerful things that like we kind of have to respect it. Lineage could help, you never know, so remains to be seen. But I'll leave him low. Like, is he bottom B? I don't know. Like maybe he's higher than these two. Maybe he's higher than these two, but I really don't know. I feel like wherever I put baby Vegeta is where I'm gonna have to put Broly Surge. Exactly. They are, well, not necessarily. First off, there's Tricolor Launch, which runs blue cards, which this deck doesn't run at all. But additionally, like, Launch just does it better because she draws more often, right? She draws more often. She combos from drop, which is relevant, more consistently. So, and being at 3 life to use your awakened ability is a little tough in IMO. Whereas, like, this thing has a harder time staying at a higher life total. Launch has an easier time staying at a higher life total. All I'm saying, guys, like, I hear your arguments. I understand why you guys think Broly's strong. I hear that. I really do. But why are we not seeing people play this deck? And why are people playing this deck instead? So Zeno do be killing them. I'm even fine with putting him here, like mid B. I'll put him at mid B, just because like I could see him be in a world of being in the same level as this and this, probably more consistent than this, and probably could see play based on like that. It's popular in Latin America. Oh, that's cool. That's good to hear. We'll put him in mid B, and by we I mean I, because I feel like there's not a strong consensus here, but at the same time, it's kind of where I'm landing him on. In terms of like representation, power level, so on and so forth. Soul Striker. Man, it just sucks that like every blue leader feels like it should be here. As much as I want Soul Striker to be here. I think it is probably, between him and Vegito, they're like probably the best blue leaders. But it feels like blue overall right now is kind of like this strategy. But Soul Striker can be built in so many different ways. I'm fine with putting him at, yeah. Soul Striker I'm fine with putting him here, I guess. Because you can build him like so many different ways. It is a jack of all trades. It can do anything. You can play Genem package, you can play mid-range, you can play aggressive. You can play control. So yeah, I'm fine with putting him in like lower A. Which is a shame because blue doesn't see a ton anymore, but it is just a really good leader. I totally agree. Mecca Frieza. Why are we talking about Mecca Frieza? He's been eroded. He's ass. He's legit C tier. Fucking trash. Psych. Because we're talking about the reboot. Z tier. Gets insane hand advantage. Cheats energy cost, which is always the hallmark of a busted leader. Just does a lot of really good things. So Z tier is where we're leaving at. Not much to say here, guys. Crew's a ton of value, super strong. Not much to talk about. Bergamo. The argument is between these two. I totally agree. I think Dark Broly wins, but I think the argument is between those two. C? B? I really don't know. I know a lot of people were super up on this deck. I don't know where I land on it. So I'm gonna have to ask you guys. You know what? I'll pull this one because honestly, Bergamo, I have no idea. I know a lot of people were really hype on it. I saw Marcus played for a long time. It seemed like it was doing okay, but I really don't know. So we're gonna pull it. Oh, idiot! I want to start a new poll. Wait, what are we talking about again? Right. A, B, C, lol. C does a whole lot of nothing like Pycon, but with no boss. Looks like they're coming with support, but now seems C. Yeah, I mean, if everyone's consensus is C, then I'm totally fine with saying that. Looking at the poll right now, it looks like we are vibing with 5 of you guys saying C, 2 you guys saying LOL tier. I don't think we need to wait all that long, but we'll give it another minute, see where people land on it. Huh. More LOLs than I was expecting, I'm not gonna lie. I think Bergamo is the worst leader on this whole list. Okay, I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's true. I'll remind you that Yellow Frieza is on this list. There's no Z tier? Absolutely, and that's on purpose. I am vetoing the ability to Z tier Bergamo. I will not respect a Z tier vote for Bergamo. Alright, Alright, it's good enough for me. C tier, it is for our boy Burry. Where'd I put him? Yep, C tier. I'm fine with putting him here. Announcer. I haven't played any of the new support. I haven't tested them at all. I don't know what it even does. But to be honest, I think I don't care. I think World Martial Arts needs a revamp, another support set. I think it needs something. It is nice that in Battle Evolutions we are getting some martial arts support, but like there was a ton of hype going into this, and I haven't seen like a single person play the deck. I mean, look, you guys might be able to convince me otherwise, but my vibe with this one is that like a lot of people were like excited about it, and then no one did anything with it. Oh, well, I mean, if you guys don't know what he does, we can always go and take a look, you know? The beauty of the internet. Yeah, this one. So we got announcer. Permanent, you can't include World Martial Art battle, non-World Martial Art battle cards or multicolor cards in your deck. Alright, shit, that's great. Treat World Martial Art cards in all areas if they have no specified cost and ignore leader card requirements, which is sweet. That means if you had World Martial Arts Tournament cards that said like this needs a Goku, well, it no longer needs a Goku. You literally just need this card. You attacks, draw one, you untaps 2 on Awaken. Then it's the same shit on his other side, except with an additional activate main for a 1, you get to choose one martial art card in your battle area, and you get to choose up to 1 battle card from your hand with a card name and the chosen card skill. So basically this means a lot of cards in World Martial Arts referenced another card. So like Yamcha referenced Boo, I think. Then you would be able to swap play one for the other. And they got like another extra support piece or something. Most of them do play the card anyways. So like I think it's a like LOL tier deck. Especially since you can't play non-World Martial Arts Tournament cards. I think that super sucks. I think it's a huge pain in the butt in my opinion. Because those restrictions means that there's so many cards that you have access to that are quality of life cards that you just don't have access to. You can't run Black Mass Sane, you can't run board removal, you can't... There's so many things that you just don't. Which really, really hinders the ability. You can't play Overwhelm. So like all that considered, like I think there's just so many restrictions to the archetype that I think it's just kind of... Plus, yeah, the cards have no protection. All of them are kind of just dead cards. You can't play Unisons, that is true. It only ignores battle cards. So you can't play Unisons, but stills. There's just so many things you can't run, so... Moving on, we're wrapping up the list soon. We got... Okay, so not Vegito. We got Broly, Green Broly. I think Green Broly is really powerful. I think he can do a lot of stupid things. I think a lot of decks still can't deal with the fact that on turn 2, you get a massive double striker into the SCR. I faced against this deck a number of times last set. I think some decks are just straight up punches in the mouth. But it can like be super swingy. So because of how swingy a lot of matchups for this deck is, I'm okay with putting him in like near the bottom of the B tier. There is a new Wiimote Unison coming. Absolutely. And then the Hero Broly stuff looks dumb fun also. So that's the thing. It's got a couple of builds. One is more janky. One is more like janky. One is more interesting. The other is more linear. But both of which do very powerful things. Some decks don't do a whole lot against it. He's there to hold Z tier in check. Is that what he is? I mean, that's true. Because I do feel like he kind of stomps on this guy. At minimum. And he can definitely punch this guy in the mouth if he can, so. Yep. I think Broly has some solid plays. I think he has some solid lines. I think he can do some really good things. So I think built right against the right meta. I think I think it like does very similar to Toppo. I think it's very powerful still. So I think the deck, the archetypes, the things it can do are still very, very strong. Counter BR Broly by playing the TP12 Veku to stop them from playing 21 and play. I mean, yeah, that's the big brain play, right? Let us see. King Vegeta. So, mind you, his new support's super good. He's getting the lineage stuff, but we're not going to talk about the lineage stuff since we're not going to go into any of that support right now. I'm leaning towards like C tier. But he's red-green stuff, which is like here. So I think if you're a red-green deck and now you can like combo for free every single turn, once a turn with his field card. Like I feel like if we're talking like red-green decks in general are B, then I feel like I just need to put every like strong red-green leader here. And I think I'm fine with putting him at low B tier. Granted, I've picked up the field card, so I'm looking forward to seeing how he does. But the field card is snapped, and I mean the leader basically means you can play a free card. You can give card double strike. You can give himself double strike. I'll do a bottom C for now, just because he's like red-green deck, and right now red-green is actually doing really well. But you can only play Saiyan cards. That's something you have to be aware of. So that's something to take into account. The leader would be great if you could play Toppo. Yeah. There are definitely enough good Saiyan cards. I totally agree with that. I'll leave him low B for now. Just feels like he can do a bunch of powerful things, but he's unproven. But at the same time, red-green stuff is proven, which gives me enough insight to believe like this is a deck that can swipe wins. It doesn't have the most insane line because it can't run Piccolo and stuff, but I think it still can do some good things, especially on the fact that you can combo for free from your drop every single turn. So it has some good matchups here, but I think against Z tier, it kind of gets shit all over. Yeah, red-green wise, I think right now he's probably the worst. But I also want to keep an eye. We're not including it as our reasoning for placing him here, but he is also getting lineage support, which is going to be super interesting moving forward. But I feel like I would rather play him than any of these leaders, just because red-green stuff is sweet. Vegito. So now the question is, Vegito the best blue generic, and is that good enough to put him at A tier? But if it's A tier, it's bottom of A tier because blue is not really played right now. Vegito Blue is A tier. If players block, it goes off on them. Zeno's wow, this man had everything ready for Vegito. Zeno's amazing. Some of the best counterplays and counter blah blah. And any units in the game enders unison are still the least interactable after leaders. I'd argue at this point they're almost less interactable than leaders, to be honest. Vegito Blue has topped every set, including this one as well. Put my guy in A tier. Alright, I'm fine with putting him in A tier. I'm even fine putting him above Piccolo. I think Piccolo is really the bottom of A tier. Probably above Bulma, but I'm not going to put him above Soul Striker because Soul Striker has so many builds he can run. While I do agree that maybe the generic blue build Vegito does better, I think because Soul Striker has so many different builds you can run, it squeaks out in terms of where I feel it should be in the placements. Vegeta's just tankier. It's a big deal in this meta when people are trying to win fast. That is true. I mean, like, it's more, he's tankier. The blockers mean it's more annoying for Broly to get in there. He does have a finisher in the form of double blue, giving triple strike to a unison, which is super relevant. So this he does do a lot of things. Right now here, in terms of core blue, I do agree Vegito is better. The argument here to make is, well, is Soul Striker just better at doing more things? Even if it's not the best mono blue deck. Yep. Surge Piccolo got beamed on. They should have given him something to just straight up make it a scry. Makes it horrendous. Especially since now he's like, he's bad. He's so bad. He doesn't draw on his front side anymore. Like, in no way or fashion. So he gains 0 advantage. He's so horrendous. Sick Fedora, thanks. It's one of the many hats that I get to swap into whenever someone claims a hat swap. So I'm gonna leave it here because I'm more partial to Soul Striker. So there is that personal bias there. But I would be totally fine with saying Vegito is better than Soul Striker. Hoping Android 16 will replace him in my heart. Hopefully. Alright, so we've got all these duplicates that I somehow created. Don't ask me how, I have no idea. But finally, to wrap up the list, we have Vegex. And then we can touch upon other stuff. Right up there, I think. The deck's been nerfed 3 times, and people are still topping and winning with it. Notably, one of which is Anthony Hernandez, who was out of the game for like 8 months. So, I think if you stack up those statistics all together, like, it is really tough to claim that Vegex is still not a busted deck. I don't respect Vegex a ton, I'm not gonna lie. I really don't. Like, every time I play against Vegex, I really don't give 2 shits. I haven't lost against a Vegex deck in like the longest time. But I still respect the fact that it can pop off, it can be super strong. It can, when it high rolls really hard. So for those reasons, I think high A tier. I think it's very much in the realm of all these other leaders, but is a notch below these other 4, in my opinion. IMO. The new Goku that came out that says is gonna change things. You have a few on board, you have to work for a counter. Yeah, I think a lot of things do change it. But at the same time, I think it's really hard to say a leader in which you can potentially free play 5 battle cards for 0 energy is really tough to say. If it high rolls, it's not good enough. And the fact that you can high roll with this deck, and there are some consistency pieces that allow you to still be able to high roll, is nuts. And then even on the Hermit Cat, the Hermit Style podcast, I know they talked about a yellow variant which runs Planet Vegeta, so you can consistently get your chunks that way. I mean, shit, yeah, there's a lot of great yellow cards you can include too, between apes, between planet. So I think there's a lot there that still makes it so that black is actually pretty viable. And I think that's pretty much it. I mean, I think that's, for the most part, we ended up covering just about most leaders that mattered. So if it's not on this list, just presume it's lull tier or like lower than C tier. Or just really wasn't worth talking about, because a lot of these decks aren't worth talking about in C tier, for what it's worth. But the most things that are relevant, important to keep in mind, I think, are these decks being up, with Z tier being like, this is obviously the top of the meta, this is what you're going to see most often. They're strong contenders. Don't be surprised if you see these decks. They can pull off top finishes. If they roll high, or if the pilot's insanely good, they could also win an event. B, you're going to see them in tournaments from time to time. They're strong decks. Don't sleep on them, but they can be defeated, and they have some of the more swingier matchups. With, you know, Z tier having more wins across the board, A tier having solid matchups across the board, and B having really good matchups and really bad matchups, and swinging between the two. I thought, honestly, Burn Gohan was one of the leaders I was thinking about including. I just wasn't sure if he was really seeing enough play. He's an old leader, so I didn't know if he sees enough play to talk about, but I know people have been playing him, which means he's probably worth talking about for like half a second. Hey, the duplicates are gone. So like, I don't know, like B, I guess, if we were talking about Gohan. Ooh, there is Ginyu. Hat swap. You think I only had one fedora? I have multiple fedoras. Red Gogeta Blue. Is Red Gogeta Blue supposed to be Red Groot, like the Red Blue Gogeta deck? I will say Ginyu is probably a miss on my part. Ginyu is actually strong enough to talk about. I'm not gonna lie. I guess Gogeta's we're talking about because he's a recently new leader. I mean, Red Beers. Do we care about Red Beers? Was it Red Beers or Blue Beers that topped recently? It must have been Red Beers, right? But I feel like, yeah, you're just running ball. No, I'm not gonna talk about Red Beers. I think the one of was interesting. But I don't know if it's worth talking in terms of an entire medalist based off one finish with the deck. It is one person who topped. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. Top is C tier. If the deck ever sees more representation, like fine. But for now, it's just like, it's a deck that did something one time. Let's see if it does anything ever again. Yes. Yeah. I mean, now I'm just doing it out of spite right now. I'm not. No cap. Like I'm just being spiteful. So this is where we've landed on the tier list. I think, besides the omission of Clash Card, I think for the most part we've been pretty fair in terms of representation. What things see. I think there's some stuff that shifts around when Battle Evolution drops. But right now, because we don't have visibility on the entire set, there's just no point in really talking about it for the most part. The highlights obviously being, I think, Z tier. I don't think anyone's shocked here. I think there is an argument that launches A instead of Z, but that's fine. I think if we were talking Rogue or things that like are 1.5, I think we're talking about like these 5 up here between Sin, Invoker, Gotenks. This could be a stand-in for like Reboot, but like this deck and Vegex, you'll see them often. Then the rest of A tier just being good solid stuff that has top, that has won, that are good strategies. B, swing your matchups. It kind of fluctuates back and forth depending on what you're playing. But there's still powerful decks that can do powerful things with the right setup. C tier, I mean, they're decks that do stuff, but like, to be honest, like they're nothing to be impressed about. They have archetypes that can do solid things, but not to a level at which you would often see them. Some of these leaders you never see anymore, and if you do see them, it's usually by just one committed pilot. LOL tier, their deck's not really worth talking about. They're funky, they're weird, but oftentimes don't actually do enough to get us to a place where they would land a solid foothold in the meta. I think that's where we're leaving that. I think I'm pretty happy in terms of where we landed with that one. I'm not gonna lie, boys. You want to see the funny hat? I mean, to be honest, the funny hat, the poop hat's the only one I really got. TBH. I'm not gonna lie, I need to buy more funny hats, I guess, if I'm gonna keep doing the hat swap thing. But the poop hat is definitely the only funny hat I have. So, not gonna lie. Just trying to keep it fresh, you know? But yeah, that was the tier list, guys. I will post up the best hat. It is the best hat. I'm not gonna lie. It is definitely the best one. I'll probably post up this tier list on the group or some stuff and see if there's any reactions. This actually might go on YouTube, so you know, say hi YouTube if you guys are interested in that. But I'm happy with the list. I think we lined up some that makes a lot of sense, and whatever's not on the list probably wasn't worth talking about anyways. But yeah, that was good. It was good. I enjoyed kicking back and talking tier list. We haven't made some in a while, and I'm looking forward to actually making our Wednesday content a bit more variety like this. You know, mixing viewer battles, mixing tier list stuff. Just try and mesh it out. There should be a channel point redemption for you to cosplay as a DBZ character. Oh my god. To get me to go out and spend money to cosplay as a DBZ character would require so many points. You know what? We might do a sub goal. Maybe we do a sub goal to get me dressed up. We'll see about that. But yeah, so keep it fresh. He says that with a poo poo. Hey man, it's rainbow poo. It's the freshest. What you mean? What you mean? With that said, guys, I think that's where we're gonna call it today. Awesome discussion. Thanks guys for popping by. It was awesome. I had a great time. Good conversation. I love making tier list videos, and I look forward to making more with you guys. Points to get you to talk shit about Invoker. Ooh, that's gonna talk. Honestly, it wouldn't take a lot of points. Like, as much as I'm a guy who loves supporting my stuff, I'm also a big believer in being like two ways about it. I love playing devil's advocate, and I can definitely shit on my own deck. So in terms of the rest of the week, tomorrow we have a Digimon tournament as usual. So if you guys are interested in watching me do that, I'm probably gonna play blue yellow again. So if you guys want to see me play blue yellow good stuff in Digimon, we'll be playing that tomorrow. And then of course we have 2 tournament streams. Tier list on your best hat. Z tier, and all the other ones B tier probably. The Quebec hat A tier. How many points to put Invoker C tier? There are no points. Invoker is not a C tier deck. Tournament weekend. Saturday and Sunday. Saturday we are doing Digimon PPG. Sunday we are doing Dragon Ball PPG. Super excited to get those out. Should be fun tournaments. I don't know what I'm gonna play yet. We'll see where we land. But keep your eyes out peeled for that. I think Eggman's still live, right? I think Eggman's still doing his thing. He's been streaming all week. That he is. So how about we go stream the Egg Boy? Give him a... Oh wow. I mean, he literally just rated us. What's up, boys? How you doing? You know what? We'll take another minute for you guys who have not been here. We made a tier list of leaders / decks in the meta right now. So if you guys want to take a quick look at what we're looking at, go to... Yeah, I'm fine. If Gyro-Shan's... yeah, sure. We'll go and rate him right after. But very quickly, for those guys who are here and did not catch our tier list. Z tier. Also, KOTO, thanks for the follow. Much appreciated. Welcome to the squad. Where's this? Well, I want to get rid of this thing. How do I get rid of this thing? There we go. I can't zoom in more than that. Z tier. Dark Broly, Mecca, Broly. You could argue launch as A tier, but we're popping her up here right now because of how many people want to play her. Raditz ain't on here. We don't talk about Reds. We don't talk about leaders that don't matter. 2 Turtles. Thanks for the follow. Much appreciated. Welcome to the squad. A tier. Shenron, super powerful. Invoker, duh. Gotenks, best green deck. Majin Vegeta, super powerful aggro. It's the same reason Reboot's here. Vegex, it's been like nerfed 4 times. It's still one of the best decks in the format. Turtles can do very powerful things. Tree of Might and Fruit are powerful cards. Cell Surge, played by very committed players, but still a deck that has topped multiple times. Beba plays on a different axis that a lot of decks don't know how to beat. Soul Striker, Toolbox, Vegito, Best General. Bulma, it's Bulma. And then King Piccolo, people are hype on it. I don't believe in it, but we put it here for everyone else. I think it's Z tier. But my chat forced me to put him A tier, so we're gonna do that. Bergamo, so I can't try Bergamo for this weekend. If I end up getting the cards, maybe we play Bergamo in a weekly tournament, but that won't be for a while. It won't be for a few weeks, but I'll look towards getting the Bergamo stuff. B tier, just a mishmash of good stuff. Not really much to go over here. The highlights being like Blue is very much in the B tier slot, and there's a couple leaders we haven't seen for a while. Hatchak, Boo, the red-green leaders that are strong but not meta defining. C tier, not really worth talking about, but like they're decks that we might as well mention. Lull tier, I mean, decks that are interesting, do cool things, but like realistically don't hold a strong representation in meta. And now their tier list. Ooh. Sorry for the quick rundown, guys, but we are wrapping up here. OG Broly with support, maybe? Yeah, so we haven't taken into account any of the battle evolution stuff, but mother, this is gonna have to wait. We haven't taken into account any of the battle evolution stuff. This tier list would change quite a bit if we do look at battle evolution, but because all the cards aren't out yet, we opted to not talk about it. But OG Broly I think is good. With the new support, I think it very much could potentially go into A tier if it provides the chain enough protection to be able to do it consistently. But for now, we're going to leave it in B tier. It can draw cards, it can do decently well.